Good evening, everyone. Let's make a start. Welcome to the City of Canning. My name's Councillor Ben Kunza. I'm proud to be the Deputy Mayor of the City of Canning, and I'll be running tonight's agenda briefing. I declare the agenda briefing of 13 June 2023 open at 6 o'clock. We acknowledge the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet, and we also pay our respects to elders both past and present. In accordance with the City of Canning Policy CM105, agenda briefings are conducted for the purpose of providing elected members with a forum to ask questions of the City's administration and to receive answers to those questions to enable informed decision-making by Council at the following week's Ordinary Council meeting. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1995, agenda briefings are not decision-making forums. Questions may be asked and answered, but there will be no debate or discussion. Questions must specifically be relevant to the item being discussed. With a forum to ask questions of the City's administration and to receive answers to those questions. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial proximity or impartiality interest they have in an item to be discussed and declare the nature of that interest at the commencement of the briefing or at the latest when the item is about to be discussed. If a member or employee has a financial proximity or impartiality interest in a matter arising during discussion, the nature of that interest must be disclosed as soon as possible after the matter is raised. Interests are to be disclosed in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act 1995 as they apply to council meetings. Individuals disclosing an interest other than an impartiality interest must not provide in that part of a briefing relating to their interest and must leave the meeting room while the item is under discussion. Agenda briefings are public meetings and any information provided to the meeting by attendees must be publicly accessible. May I ask everyone here in this briefing to make sure your mobiles are turned off or on silent for the duration of the briefing. The briefing is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Attendance, apologies. I've got a few apologies tonight. Mayor Patrick Hall is an apology, as is Councillor Sarah Sabiri and our CEO Michael Littleton. Approved leave of absence, there is none. Disclosures of interest. 3.1, disclosure of interest, financial, direct or indirect, there are none. Declarations of impartiality, there are none. Any councillor wish to make a declaration? No, moving on. Question time for the public. Response to previous questions taken on notice, there are none. Question time from the public. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. A question must relate to items listed on the agenda paper. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If your answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next Ordinary Council meeting. In accordance with Policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their interest to ask questions with the City's administration shall be called upon in order in which registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. Open question time at 6:03. The City has received questions for tonight's meeting from Leona Mullings. Ms Mullings, please step forward and ask your questions. If you can state your name and address.
Ask the questions.
No worries. Can do that. The first question with respect to do you know what the dog spaces strategy? It's to the Director of Customer and Community. Why does the council see fit to have dogs on leashes if the owner is a responsible dog owner and knows their dog is not a danger to other individuals or other dogs?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Deputy Mayor. The requirement to hold dogs on leashes in public places is prescribed by state legislation, namely the Dog Act of 1976. Section 3.31, control of dogs in certain places, details the dog should not be in a public place unless it is held by a person who is capable of controlling the dog or securely tethered. The only time that a dog is exempt from this requirement is if there is an area specified by local government under Section 51 as a dog exercise area. This basic requirement ensures responsible pet ownership and protects your pet from traffic and other unrestrained animals. Accidents or other pets who are potentially aren't as well behaved could injure or scare your pet if not held on a leash. It is also respectful and considerate of other people who may be afraid of dogs. Many people want to enjoy walks without dogs bothering them or frightening them, and some people, especially children, are frightened of dogs even if they are friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McQuaid. The second question, why doesn't the city invest in more dog parks in the area instead of trying to find ways to build revenue by finding dog owners, giving their dogs a chance to stretch, socialise and play? Director Bowe?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The city has allocated $180,000 in the 2023-2024 draft budget to build a fenced dog park at Park Beach Close in Shelley. The Dog Spaces strategy also identifies Queen's Park Reserve as the other location to build a dog park in the future to complement the existing parks proposed at Walleri Park, Connaught Park and Wilson Park, which is part of the Kent Street Weir redevelopment.
Thank you, Director Bowe. And the last question, Ferndale Oval has 3 massive separate parks. Why can't you allow dogs and their owners freedom at this park, as well as build some gym-style equipment for the owners?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There are certainly some additional ongoing management costs associated with off-lead areas, and Ferndale Reserve is one of the city's busiest active reserves, with all 3 ovals being utilised by a number of different sporting and resident scout groups over the year. This reserve is maintained to a standard that enables intensive sporting usage and is not supported as a location for off-leash exercising of dogs. The Dog Spaces strategy aims to provide a balance between user groups and their demands for public open space, and there are currently 63 parks in the city that allow dogs to be off-leash and 147 parks where dogs must be kept on-leash. It's acknowledged that parks and reserves are shared spaces and everyone is entitled to enjoy public open spaces, whether they have a dog or not.
Thank you, Director Bowe, and thank you, Mrs Mullings, for those questions. I have a Bill Buddha-Selleck that would like to ask 3 questions regarding the same item, EN 01323. Just please state your name and address.
Bill Buddha-Selleck, 3 Perina Place, Wilson. In relation to the Kent Street Park, Wilson Park, I've read the strategy plan and I understand the reluctance to place seating there, because the belief is it stops interaction between the owner and the dog. However, in the plan, it also talks about encouraging use of that park by older people. I've seen on a number of occasions now older people flatten when their legs have been taken out from them by dogs. And I think it would be worth reconsidering having some seating there, sort of like priority seating for older people or frail people. It's often not only the owner and the dog who goes there, but in my case, I take someone else and other people do the same thing, bit of an outing. So that was the first issue.
We'll just get an answer to that, Mr Buddha-Selleck. Director Bowe?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Look, we're happy to have a look at some of the infrastructure requirements associated with the dog park, and we can get back to the gentleman when we finalise the design or when we go through the design process for that park, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Director Bowe. Your second question?
Thank you very much. The second question is about the gates, whether it's possible with a simple mechanism to have self-closing gates. Often they're left open unintentionally by people who don't think about it, but just a simple spring would bring it back to a, or remind the person it does need to be shut. So that was the second issue.
Director Bowe?
Again, Deputy Mayor, we can look into that during the design phase.
Thank you. And final question?
The third issue is in relation to Judy Panel Park, which is a dog exercise area where a child's playground is co-located. There's no separation between the dog area and the children's playground area, and there's no fencing between the children's playground area and Fern Road. I presume on basis of my reading you regard Fern Road as a fairly quiet road, which is why there's no fencing. However, I don't think it is. Some people use it as a bit of a speedway. So I was wondering about moving the off-leash area down into Fern Place. There's a park between Fern Place and Fern Road, and having the Judy Panel Park as an on-lead area, so there's no more confrontation between families with children and dogs. So that was my sort of thinking around those areas.
Thank you for that. That's a common problem across our parks, and a good possible solution, Director Boat.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Rather than get into the design elements at this particular park's location, I'm sure one of the staff can contact the gentleman tonight and get his contact details and have a further discussion about those arrangements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Are there anyone else in the public gallery that would like to ask any questions in relation to tonight's agenda? No, that being the case, I'll close public question time at 6:10. We'll move to deputations. A deputation has been approved for Sean Fairfowl from Lateral Planning in regard to report CD 00923, adoption of scheme amendment number 10 to local planning scheme 42, portion of lot 102, number 280, Bannister Road, Canning Vale, introducing additional gross floor area provisions with additional land use site number 3 in Schedule B. Please come forward to make your deputation. You have 10 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors, for your time this evening. I promise not to take 10 minutes. The key, I'm here representing the Livingston Shopping Centre in relation to this matter. The key issues in relation to this, which I'd ask you to consider, is that the proposal is not consistent with your local planning strategy. It's not consistent with SPP 4.2, and it will have an impact on other centres and other surrounding centres. The scheme amendment provisions are not tenant specific, so whilst there might be assurances or an intention from the landowner to have a certain tenant, that is essentially meaningless once the amendment is approved. So in relation to the local planning strategy, it's not a location that's contemplated for a neighbourhood centre, and this is a neighbourhood centre. Rather, the local planning strategy seeks to locate activity, and particularly retail activity, within designated retail centres. This isn't a designated retail centre in your local planning strategy. It's not consistent with SPP 4.2. Again, that seeks to promote activity, and particularly retail activity, within designated activity centres. The officer report stated that SPP 4.2 doesn't apply because this isn't a centre. That is not consistent, one, with the classifications that are applied by SPP 4.2 in relation to centres, and it's also not consistent with the intent of SPP 4.2, which is that activity be located in centres and that there be no activity, retail activity, out of centres. And that's what this is. This is an out-of-centre development that will undermine existing centres. The gradual creep of additional floor space within this proposal doesn't exempt it from being having to comply with SPP 4.2. In relation to the modelling includes a 20-kilometre catchment. This is not a standard catchment for a supermarket. I'd ask you to consider the last time you drove 20 kilometres to go to a supermarket. The usual catchment for a supermarket and supermarket modelling is about 5 kilometres, sometimes less, sometimes a little bit more. But 20 kilometres a radius, all that does is dilutes the impact of this centre throughout a much larger area, which restricts the percentage impact that the applicant has modelled and as predicted will be the impact to other centres. Now we understand, excuse me, that the applicant is seeking a specialty supermarket, but again, as I said, the scheme amendment is not restrictive and it's open for the landowner to change tenants. So we say the impact is undoubtedly higher than has been modelled. Now, it's not the big tenants that will necessarily suffer. So the Coles and the Woolworths won't necessarily suffer. It's the smaller mum and dad tenancies, the butcher, the baker, not the candlestick maker, but the newsagent. They will suffer from a loss of customers from within those other centres. And even if we take the numbers as being right, a 6%, 5 to 6% impact, I'd ask you to consider whether you'd take a 5 or 6% pay cut. And it's likely to have a greater impact if it was modelled in accordance with how most other similar applications are modelled. So next week, I'd ask you to consider those smaller operators within the surrounding existing shopping centres and activity centres they've located in the proper locations. They've located where we want that sort of activity to occur. If we're after this sort of activity in this centre, we should be going about it in the right way. We should be having a review of your local planning strategy, testing it properly, and then if it is an appropriate location, then you make the proper planning decision through your local planning strategy, and then we deal with the scheme amendment. This is going the wrong way around, in our opinion. It's bringing the cart before the horse. So on that basis, I'd ask you to, when you consider this next week, I'd ask you to reject the scheme amendment, and if you need to, seek that the local planning strategy be reviewed in light of the proposal rather than a standalone scheme amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairfowl. Does any councillors have any questions? No? Thank you very much. A deputation has been approved for Jackson Tomich from Urbis Propriety Limited in regard to the report CD 00923, adoption of scheme amendment number 10 to local planning scheme number 42. Please come forward, Mr. Tomich, make your presentation. Likewise, you have 10 minutes.
Can you hear? That's all good. Dear Mayor and councillors, thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jackson Tomich and I speak in relation to agenda item CD 00923, which is the initiation of scheme amendment number 10 to local planning scheme number 42. This relates to lot 102 Bannister Road, Canning Vale. That's better known as Perth Markets. I myself am from Urbis and the project town planner. I'm joined this evening by Michael Bryden, the Chief Executive Officer of Perth Markets Group, and also Dawson Demacia-Hunning from Praxis, the Retail Impact Consultant. I'll discuss the merits of the proposal and its planning context. Michael will discuss Perth Markets' commitment to the City of Canning and its growth program, with Dawson discussing the findings of the Retail Impact Assessment and the subsequent addendum. We'd be pleased to answer any queries you may have of us with respect of the proposal following this deputation. I'm also joined by Darren Levy from Uloth and Associates, who is representing the traffic consultant on the project. So if you have any traffic related comments or questions, we're here to answer those. So the purpose of this deputation is to express our full support for the officer's recommendation and support the proposal. And I'd like to thank the city officers for their professionalism and cooperation throughout the assessment process. The proposed scheme amendment will allow for greater retail floor space on the Market City site, specifically a minor increase from the current permitted 7,000 square metres gross floor area, the GFA, to 12,000 square metres GFA. This is not a development application, and a development application will eventually follow, in which the city can then make the decision on the land use and development. We reiterate that the proposed increase is not for a mainstream supermarket operator, but a grocer that reflects the fresh produce nature of Perth Markets. From a planning perspective, the site is designated as Additional Use Area 3 under the planning scheme. This designation permits the development of non-industrial related land uses upon the Market City area. So the Market City area is that small portion of the Perth Markets land holding along the corner of Bannister Road and Ranford Road. These additional uses are capped at a combined maximum GFA. This scheme amendment does not introduce any new land use permissibility, but retaining what has already been improved and intended to go on site by council. It only speaks to minorly increase the permitted GFA to allow for the development of a specialty grocer on site. As Dawson will elaborate on after myself, the future growth will have no adverse impact on the operation of existing areas, commercial areas within the City of Canning. Further, a detailed discussion with Main Roads was had throughout the process, and a revised traffic impact assessment was submitted with the support of Main Roads, acknowledging that future works will be required at the development application stage. I'll now hand over to Michael Bryden from Perth Markets Group, who will then be followed by Dawson from Praxis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Deputy Mayor, Honourable Councillors. The purpose of my being before you this evening is just to represent the landowners, CEO of Perth Market Group, to assure you that we are sincere in our dealings with the council and in the precinct in which we live and work. This development is fully representative of what we're trying to do in the central trading area of our site, as well as in the outside retail and commercial site. We are fully and committed to the produce industry, and everything that we do would be in and around and supporting that industry. And we're fully committed to this region since it was built 35 odd years ago in this area. We have no intention of moving anywhere else unless it's absolutely necessary. It wouldn't necessarily be our choice to do so. That shows a great deal of commitment to this region, and hopefully it's going to benefit all that live here and all that work here as well. Unlike someone else's, another entity or organization that may feel that's a bit of a conflict for their interests. Ours are well and truly solely in this council's region, not in other areas of this state or this country that would have perhaps other reasons for feeling that we're a threat. We've been working with Michael and his team in many initiatives to make sure that we're trying to work both with and together with the council and the city of Canning and all of our initiatives, as we both strategically in the short and in the long term. So I just hope that you'll see it through the way we do, and we certainly can answer any technical questions with our specialty experts that we have with us this evening. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, my name's Dawson. I'm from Praxis Economics. We undertook the retail analysis for the project. Initially, we used gravity modeling with, which is a standard activity center planning mechanism or tool. And the information input into the model was based on the specific proponent. That led to a 20-kilometer catchment being assessed with an understanding of details regarding turnover and floor space of current locations. With that understanding, the impacts were insignificant according to the draft state planning policy 4.2, which means they were less than 5%. At the request of the council, we further assessed a hypothetical scenario where a full-line supermarket or something similar would locate at the site. With a 5-kilometer catchment. In that scenario, the impacts were just above 5% for local centers, which are moderate according to the draft state planning policy 4.2. Generally, significant impacts are greater than 10%, which is now in the guidelines for the planning policy. So we're quite comfortable in saying that we believe the proposed development would the proposed change in land use would not lead to a significant impact. Most likely will be insignificant based on an understanding of the detailed turnover of the proponent. And that is all I have to say.
Just would like to again extend my thanks to the Mayor, councillors and councillor staff for their time this evening, and the project team available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for coming along tonight. Councillors, do you have any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have one more deputation this evening. A deputation has been approved for Erin Haynes in regard to report EN 01323, outcome of community engagement on review of dogs on leash and off leash spaces. Please come forward, Ms. Haynes, make your deputation. You have 10 minutes. Thanks.
The Kent Street Weir Dog Park. I raise 6 safety concerns and offer possible solutions for the Council's consideration. Point 1, rules of entry. We cannot rely on common sense for a harmonious park environment. Just in the last 2 weeks, I have witnessed 2 female dogs on heat and 2 aggressive dogs. I propose standardised rules for entry that are clearly signposted on all entries and exits. An example of clear and concise rules was messaged to Mayor Patrick Hall on 9th of April 2023 for his consideration. A copy is also attached. Point 2, drainage. The drainage is not currently sufficient for low-lying land, which captures our winter rainfall. Some dogs enjoy playing in it. However, a large body of stagnant water poses serious health risks to our dogs. I propose 3 options for improvement. 1, proper drainage infrastructure. 2, fill in the area with soil. Or 3, fence it off during the wet months. Point 3, shared space. Kent Street Weir Park is a shared space with a canoe club, which means gates are left open for cars and transportation of canoes. Gates that are open increases the risk of our dogs and the community should they escape the park grounds. I propose a 100% dedicated space for dogs for the safety of everyone. Point 4, fencing. Fencing along the river is not adequate for small dogs, and it also poses endangerment to the turtles who reside in the Canning River Reserve. I propose improved fencing along the river to keep small dogs in and turtles out. Point 5, drinking water. Fresh drinking water is important for our dogs' health. Currently, there is a tap on the side of the Canoe Club building and makeshift water bowls. I propose a purpose-built water fountain for the dogs. Point 6, park potholes. Dogs love to dig, and there's also something tasty in the soil that dogs are eating. Although most dog owners are responsible and stop their dog from eating or digging the soil, it is inevitable. It's in their nature. The holes, however, are trip hazards for us humans. I submitted a request via Snap Send Solve on 4th of May 2023 for the many potholes to be filled in. The matter was resolved around 26 days later. I propose 2 options to help the grounds be maintained for our ongoing safety. 1, the groundkeepers have a standing order to fill in any potholes after mowing the grounds, or 2, dump a pile of sand on the grounds for the owners to fill in the holes themselves in between the council's maintenance. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms Haynes, for coming down and providing your views on this. I'm just going to ask Director Bowe, there's a few things that you raised that he probably could provide a bit of clarity to up front that might give you a bit of peace of mind going forward.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, Ms Haynes. The city's dog spaces strategy does propose a list of rules under the dog park etiquette subheading, so we're happy to consider how we apply and administer those rules for the dog park at Wilson Park moving forward. The drainage issues at Kent Street Parkland or at Wilson Park, being so close to the river, it's not something that is an easy fix, but certainly our plans to separate and consider the drainage issues and propose an exclusive area and also invest in the wetland protection area where it is more wet more regularly is part of the design considerations. In relation to your third point, it is proposed to relocate the Canoe Club building from that current location and to create a significant separation between the activities of the Canoe Club and the dedicated dog park moving forward, including fencing and fencing that will be upgraded to restrict some animals entering and to make it a little bit more secure. possibly the earlier gentleman's suggestion of some self-closing gates might be included as well. Drinking water for dogs will be upgraded in the purpose-built facilities. And just in relation to the potholing, appreciate that you, and thank you for sending that issue through. Given that Wilson Park is not an active area, whilst it might be unsightly, it's certainly not a huge priority for the city to go back and fill those, unlike it would have been if it was an active reserve where people are playing sport on. So the time frame to respond to that is not outside the realms of our normal operations, but our staff are down there quite regularly, and we would go back and fill potholes as required if we believe they posed a risk to the public.
Thank you, Director Bowe, and once again, thanks for coming down and providing your views. We'll move on to item number 5, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. There are none. 6, reports of committee meetings. The reports of committee meetings of the Audit and Risk Committee and the CU Performance Review Committee will be noted in the ordinary council meeting agenda for 20th June 2023. Reports. The first is the reports of the Chief Executive Officer. There are none. Next is the reports of the Director of Corporate and Commercial, Ms Lorraine Driscoll. The first is CC 01123, the Land Utilisation Plan 2020 to 2025 minor review. The recommendation is on page 5 of the agenda, is on screen now. An alteration is required to paragraph 19 by changing $465,000 to $530,000 to align with the figures quoted within tables 1 and 2 of the report. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I've just got a question in relation to Project 34 on Barbican Street in Shelley. I also note that this is referred to in the monthly financials on page 35, but as a CapEx. So I'm just wondering what that project relates to, because it also isn't in the table. That's the table that's listed in the subsequent pages where every other project that's listed in item 5 is.
Director Driscoll.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I'll take that question on notice and provide some information prior to next week's meeting.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Spencer-Teo? Councillor Sweeney.
Just with the 465 gone up to 530k, this is, from what I can see, it's a minor review. It's not a major review. It seems quite excessive, that amount of money. Can I be provided just with some further details on how this figure was estimated, please?
Director Driscoll.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. The details of the 530 is contained in both table 1 and table 2, and regarding the different activities against each of those projects. Are you seeking additional information about how the separate budgets were addressed? Yep. Okay, we can bring that back to you for next week's meeting. Yep.
Any further questions? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm referring to land optimisation opportunity number 28, 50 to 56 Bessaria Crescent in Ferndale. The facilities there are currently leased to the Linwood Ferndale Playgroup, and not all that long ago a $72,000 playground was installed there by the state government. What's the intention of the city with this site? It's been identified as a medium priority.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I'll take that question on notice and provide you some more information from the original land utilisation project.
Anything further, Councillor Bain? No. I've just got a couple of questions, Director Driscoll. Just following on from Councillor Sweeney, I was just wondering if, with respect to the number of projects for the upcoming financial year, there are actually some real complex, important strategic ones and regarding strategic land holdings. And I was just wondering why we've listed so many for the upcoming financial year. I just don't want to see us investing into consultants and for reports that end up needing to be done again in 3 or 4 years.
Thank you. One of the attachments, as you would be aware, is the opportunities list, and that's been updated to reflect projects that had originally been planned to occur and have been pushed out, and that relates to resourcing of the team. The team has been under-resourced, and we're seeking resource at the moment. So the expectation is that these projects can be progressed to investigation stage based on the current resourcing that we have.
So you're confident in 12 months' time these will all have done in the next 12 months? And just following on from that, when outlining the completed land optimisation initiatives, can we actually include both the budgeted associated expenditure and the actual associated expenditure instead of just the revenue gain, so we can actually see how much was invested into it and how much was invested compared to what we expected to?
Absolutely, we can include that.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, moving on. The next one is monthly financial reports, May 2023, that's CC 01223. The recommendation is on page 22 of the agenda, it's on screen now. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Page 35, the Cannington to Willetton Shared Path. The city notes in the report that Wilcox Street will be carried forward to 23-24. I just wanted to confirm that this project is going ahead in 23-24.
Director Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I can confirm it will be Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Director. Any further questions? All right, moving on. 7.3, Director of Planning and Development, Mr Graham Bride. The first item is CD 00923, adoption of scheme amendment number 10 to local planning scheme 42, portion of lot 102, number 280, Bannister Road, Canning Vale, introducing additional gross floor area provisions with additional use site number 3 in Schedule B. The recommendations on page 61 of the agenda is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, could we get Director Bride to respond to the first deputation as to the timing and impacts of the recommendation that the local planning strategy be reviewed?
Director
by
Bride.
the OCM, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. In terms of the local planning strategy as it stands, as per paragraph 23, the city is of the view that the proposal is not inconsistent with the local planning strategy, given we're not creating, or the proposal doesn't create any new or additional centres. It's not creating any new commercial area. There's an existing additional use zone which covers this particular part of the site. There's no additional land uses being proposed. The only proposal is a moderate increase in floor space. The 12,000 square metres gross floor area includes some of the back of house activities. If the net lettable area was used, it's only an increase of 1,800 square metres on the existing situation. So we don't believe that the proposal needs to be put on hold to undertake a review of the local planning strategy, which would take a number of years. We are intending to start that review towards the end of the calendar year, but it would take 2 to 3 years for that to progress. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you, Director. Any further questions? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Just a follow one. Could we restrict the type of use of that internal space, as suggested? Perth Market said they're going to use it as more of a small grocery store rather than a number of individual tenancies, or would that come at a DA stage?
Director Bride.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor. It's difficult to sub-categorise the shop definition. So that's why you'll notice one of the additional attachments models a hypothetical standard shopping centre. I think that was really important because obviously, whilst there's a clear intention to go down the track of a grocer, we wanted to let council know what would be the scenario if that particular issue or that particular store with intention fell over. So that was the whole reason that addendum was prepared, to show what the impact would be if it was a standard supermarket.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Jacobs.
Yes, Mr Deputy Mayor. So the amendment, I believe, is well within the scheme amendment number 10, right? That's it's not anything out of what's allowed. Is my understanding correct?
Director Bride, is it permissible under local planning scheme number 42?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor. So the current land use mix and the additional use area under the current scheme is exactly the same. The only change is a small increase or moderate increase in the floor space. And that's the whole purpose of this amendment, is to propose an amendment to the cap which currently sits on that land to accommodate the specialty grocer application. So if you have a look at the retail impact test, which is the test that the draft statement of planning policy suggests be undertaken, it's quite a detailed test that looks at all the different centres in that catchment, looks at the hierarchy of activity centres, and the outcome of that shows no more than a 1.5% impact on any of the existing centres within that catchment. So a very, very small, insignificant impact.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Sweeney?
Do we know whether it's the intention of the markets to lease that space out, that 1,800 square metres, or are they going to use it themselves?
Director Bride?
Through Mr Mayor, there is obviously discussions that Perth markets are having with a potential proponent. That those discussions are commercial in confidence, so that's something I can't disclose or I'm aware of in too much detail. So that'd be something the Perth markets and a potential tenant would work through.
Councillor Sweeney, anything further?
Yeah, just one last question. Recently I asked the CEO to provide some information about the rates or the amount of rates that the Perth markets pay every year. That hasn't been forthcoming. Can I just ask for maybe that to be revisited, to be provided to councillors, please?
Noted. Thanks, Councillor Sweeney. We'll pass it on to the CEO. Any further questions? Councillor Jacobs?
Thanks, Mr Deputy Mayor. The brilliant questioning by Councillor Sweeney spurred my mind for another question. If this was allowed, would this result in more rates? I believe the rate take for the city would increase. Is my understanding correct?
Director Bride?
Through Mr Mayor, I'll probably have to refer that to my colleague, Director Driscoll, or take that on notice, if you like.
Director Driscoll?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, the rates will be determined by the GRV, so it will depend what the GRV is posed. So I will take that on notice and bring
just
it back
follow
to
up if I could. So, if the value of the asset increases, then surely the GRV would increase, resulting in an increase in rates. Would my logic be sound? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next item. I will move on to the Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Mr Warren Bowe, EN 01023, the tender 15-2019, Cat 2, FM 033.465 for Warrender Hole condition renewal. The recommendation on page 78 of the agenda is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Sorry, I have several. Have we changed our tender process in the last 6 months to a year, by any chance? Or even the people on the panel?
Director Bowe?
No, I don't believe so, Mr Deputy Mayor, but maybe Councillor Spencer-Teo could be more specific about what may have changed.
It just seems to be a little bit messy. It doesn't seem to be very clear. So what I get from reading through the officer recommendation and obviously the confidential attachments, so I'll be careful what I say here, but did we give the full specs of option 3 when we advertised for tender? Because I note that what we seem to have is like a de-scoped version of the kitchen upgrade, which one respondent responded to, and the second one responded to, but it was quite a significant price difference. Is that because they were quoting on 2 different scopes, or is that the same scope?
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess the first response is that no, the tender processes haven't changed in that context, and we can only surmise that there was a misunderstanding in relation to the interpretation by the tenderers because the scope was consistent.
Councillor Spencer-Teo?
So the misunderstanding was consistent with both tenderers or just one? because the prices are so different that it's hard to tell.
Director Bowe?
I can take that question on notice, actually, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Basically, the optional scope 3 that was advertised was a lesser scope, and the price that we received, which was higher, we believe misinterpreted the scope that was available.
Okay, so it's the other way
Councillor
around. So obviously, and also with the option 1, that wasn't included in the preferred tender, so we went back to them to clarify, and they obviously have provided us with a small additional cost to option 1. So that's why it's a little bit confusing trying to understand it. But could we, between now and the OCM, go back and get a price for the full kitchen works? Because from what I'm reading, it looks like we're going to do the full kitchen upgrade irrespective, but we're just going to separate the upscope version and do that later, but in the same year. Is my interpretation correct?
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Whether or not we progress the full scope of the kitchen fit out, the community kitchen fit out, will be dependent on Council's decision about awarding the tender for the base works and the optional scopes 1, 2 and or 3. And that'll be a decision that we will make after the decision on the tender. But we have made some broad estimates about what a community kitchen upgrade to that facility would cost, and looking in the draft budget for next year, we believe it could be accommodated if pending the council decision on the awarding of this tender.
So then, for the same reason that we're doing the options 1, 2 and 3, in that you're not demobilising and all of that stuff again, why wouldn't we just do the full kitchen upgrade as part of this tender process? Because obviously, if we did do the upscoped of the kitchen, that wouldn't go through a tender process, would it? Because it'd be well under the $250,000. Is that correct?
Director Bowe?
The latter part is correct, Councillor Spencer-Teo, yes. But given the funding available to deliver the community kitchen full scope isn't available this financial year, that's why we have removed that from consideration before council at the moment.
Can I just ask while you're on that? In recommending point 3, has the tangible need for that the community kitchen actually been identified? Because I was sort of confused with the fact that there was a tangible need needing to be qualified, but also we're still recommending it with point 3.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We believe there's a tangible need for the upgraded kitchen. It's just that we don't have the funds to deliver it this financial year, but we can prepare the project and align, subject to funding in next year, the delivery of that work.
Councillor Spencer-Teo?
That was going to be my next question. The other question I've got is relating to the breastfeeding and parent room facilities. Is there one user group requesting that, or more than one user group requesting that, those facilities?
I don't have the specifics on that one, Deputy Mayor, but I can get that information to Councillor Spencer-Teo and the rest of the council.
The reason for my question is I would assume that more user groups would want a kitchen rather than one particular user group wanting that. So I'm just trying to work out the prioritisation of that over the kitchen, just to understand that thinking.
It's probably a price difference there as well.
There is.
Next question.
With the toilets, it says that there's change rooms. Are there actually change rooms in this facility? And are we proposing to keep those, considering there's no sporting activities or events used from there?
No, there aren't change rooms per se.
Okay. So, okay, that makes sense then. It also says in 6B of the report that they were going to relocate the cleaner's storeroom. Don't we provide all the cleaning services with our staff to that facility, and don't they come with their own equipment?
Director Bowe?
We do provide some cleaning services to the facility, but there's also some cleaning expectations on the casual hirers, as I understand it.
And just with the flooring, I note that we replaced that in 2021. Based on the current and predicted future use of that, is it anticipated that we're going to need to be sanding this every 2 years? Or has there been an unusual amount of wear and tear in the last 2 years?
Director Bowe?
I can take that question on notice. Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and get back to the council.
Councillor Spencer.
And last question, with the proposed internal and external painting, is that just trim painting or is there a proposal to paint the exposed brick as well?
Director Bowe.
I'll get some clarity from the staff on that one, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll call Manager Infrastructure, Mr McKinnon, if he could answer that question for me. Thanks.
Good evening, Mr McKinnon.
Through the Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor Kunza, it involves the painting of the brickwork. And in relation to the prior question, the flooring is for the stage works and related structures, not the actual floor.
That's the $2,400. That's just for the staging area, not for the floors that were replaced in 2021.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. And sorry, just finally one thing. I noticed this project has gone in 2.5 years from a $370,000 project to a $780,000 project to now a $900,000 project and potentially a $1 million project. Could I just get, obviously take this on notice, but just a understanding of why the scope of works has changed so significantly from just needing a toilet upgrade, which clearly needs to be done because you can literally smell it from around the corner, to now all of these obviously additional things and the priority. Understand the priority, obviously option 1, 2 and 3, but how did we go from $370,000 to almost $800,000 and then have 3 options on top as well?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I did check the corporate business plan, Councillor Spencer Teo, as well, and just refresh my memory on what value was assigned to that project. And again, that was probably figures from about 2 years ago, but the scope has definitely changed. There's been a significant engagement undertaken with the user groups, and there's also been the principle that we could bring forward some of the works to ensure that we intervene in this property and do the renewal works and other works that will enhance the utilisation of the facility as a one-stop, rather than do some of the works in piecemeal and then come back in 3 or 4 years later to fix the issues that we hadn't addressed in that one. But I do take your point. 370 in the corporate business plan 15-18 months ago versus what we're looking at now is a significant difference. Our improvement in our strategic asset modelling as well, and not just taking the SAM data or the SAM outputs as the cost estimates, and applying a bit more rigour is going to be important moving forward.
Thank you. Any other councillors have any questions? Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Paragraph 12, the city received feedback from users which included the hall's lack of visual appeal as well as the surrounding areas. The city goes on to mention that the project will provide a more inviting, visually appealing facility. What is the city going to do to the building other than paint it? And if there are just painting the bricks, what about the stained awnings, etc.? Thank you.
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think the city plans to undertake a little bit more than just the external painting, certainly in keeping with the other investments that we've done in and around Edgware Park over the recent times. I think would give some confidence that we weren't going to just do the external painting, but as far as some of the other matters that we can do, items that we can attend to regarding the landscaping, some of that other work that you mentioned, Councillor Bain, we can consider that as well.
Anything further, Councillor Bain?
A few more questions, if I may, Deputy Mayor. Is there an indicative perspective drawing of the upgraded hall that elected members will be able to view?
Director Bowe.
I may ask Mr McKinnon to address that one. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Mr McKinnon.
Through the Deputy Mayor, the building construction works are expected to occur late in the calendar year of this year, and then we'll be doing some subsequent works noted by Director Bowe subsequent to that. So in regard to your question, viewing the completed hall would be earlier in 2024.
Do you mean an indicative design right now? Is there a design that can be shown right now as what it's going to look like?
No, Deputy Mayor will come back to you with more indicative date.
Thank you, Mr McKinnon. Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. With the, just extending on from what Director Bowe discussed or put forward as far as ancillary works are concerned, can the City confirm that new signage will be installed? And, well, I'm a regular walker-by of Wandara Hall, and the current signage is quite small and obscured by an awning.
Director Bowe?
Yeah, we'll definitely look into that, including that in the scope. We've got some more wayfinding signage in and around that precinct that I'm sure we can expand to incorporate the new newly refurbished hall, subject to Council's approval, that is.
Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That'll be great. I note that there's some significant damage and wear to the access road that leads up to Wandara Hall. Will that be part of any upgrade in the near future?
Director Bowe?
It's certainly not part of the scope of this project, Councillor Bain, but we'll have our engineering staff look at that and see what we can do.
Any further questions? I just have a question with respect to paragraph 38 on the surplus funds from the other projects. Have they all been under budget, have they?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor, yes, the large majority of them were delivered under the allocated budget.
So, because like the Riverton Library toilets upgrade was fenced off for weeks, I thought that must have been over budget. But are you able to say how much funds there is to contribute towards this?
I can give a breakdown of each of those projects that are identified and what were the surplus in the allocated budget, Deputy Mayor, absolutely.
Just the quantum will do. Thanks. All right, moving on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, just a quick question. Hoskins Investments, have they got a history of delivering projects for the city previously?
Yes, many actually, Councillor Parkinson. Director Bowe?
You're correct, Deputy Mayor, and Hoskins are one of our appointed panel contractors, Councillor Parkinson, who've undertaken a number of projects for us successfully.
Moving on. We move to EN 01123, Queen's Park Open Space, the State Football Centre, land tenure. The recommendation is on page 90 of the agenda, is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions? I just have a couple of questions. That wasn't for me. With respect to the Eastern Reserve, do we have any maintenance costs when we take control of that area?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We already do deliver basic maintenance in that area, but I'm happy to provide some cost estimates about what we spend in that general area. Yeah.
And going on from that, are you able to provide information as to the expected increase in operational expenditure going forward as a result of both the Queen's Park Regional Open Space Master Plan and the increased investment into the plantings and that in the neighbouring areas?
Yeah, we can provide some detail to that, Deputy Mayor.
And just lastly, is there any information as to why the Commonwealth funding hasn't come through, or when it's likely?
Not as yet, Deputy Mayor, but we can make some further inquiries to see where the status of that funding agreement is.
Thank you, Director Bowe. It'd be great for the city to be able to progress that. Any questions from any councillors? All right, moving on. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah. I have a question, a few questions. So if the funding doesn't get in from the state and the federal, can we delay this? Or are we just going to do this regardless of the state of the area?
Are you talking about the land tenure or the...
I'm talking about provincially the reserves coming. I believe in this motion there's some of it's going to come in from us, from other places of government.
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. There is no funding from the state for our work or our assumption of the care and control of this land. The city was previously responsible for a much larger area of land, which is now going to be divested and handed over to Venues West as part of the State Football Centre management. But in the preliminary discussions we had with the department in relation to the State Football Centre, we had agreed in principle that the land tenure arrangements would be similar to what's proposed tonight. And in our project development for the Manana Park redevelopment or the Queen's Park master plan, the land tenure arrangements do accommodate that. So if we don't get the money, we would still assume the care and control of that additional portion of land or the incorporation of that additional portion of land immediately adjacent to Manana Park, and we would just assume the management responsibility for that as a matter of course.
Councillor Jacobs.
Would it, is that just automatic and that's best practice, or if we don't get, is there any recourse to say, okay, we haven't got the, I know that there's multiple sets of money. I think what you're saying is that it's between the state and us, and the state doesn't owe us any money, so why would we delay it because we're short money from the Commonwealth government? Is that the basic logic?
Director Bowe?
Yeah, certainly the land tenure arrangements are between us and the state, and we are at a position now that was agreed in principle some time ago in the infancy and the project development of the State Football Centre. But the land tenure arrangements that are proposed, particularly around Manana Park, would add very little or would have very little financial impact on our day-to-day operations.
Thank you, councillors. Moving on. The next item is EN 01223, Environmental Honour Board Nominations 2122. The recommendation is page 100 of the agenda is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions? I actually just have a question regarding policy CM188 that guides this and the definitions. I just want to ask, with respect to long service and recognising that there's some volunteers in the City of Canning that have volunteered for decades, that should it not require a lengthy service rather than simply just living in the city for over 10 years? Or obviously that would relate to looking at the policy again. I just was quite surprised. I'd never noticed before that you have to live in the city for 10 years or contribute at a organisation for 10 years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm racking my brain as to the amendments to CM188, but I'll take that on notice and see, because I do believe that there were changes to that, the duration of tenure or service, which were made at the last time the policy was reviewed, and so we can retrace some of that and provide that information to all elected members.
Thanks, Director Bowe. Any questions? Moving on to EN 01323, Outcome of Community Engagement on Review of Dogs on Leash, Off Leash Spaces. The recommendation is page 106 of the agenda, is on screen now. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Bain?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was just wondering if the city could confirm if Wajak Point is a off-lead area, on-lead area, or a prohibited area for dogs.
Director Bowe?
I may ask the Manager of Parks and Environment, Mr Johnson, to give some clarity on that one.
Mr Johnson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Sorry, I'm just referring to our GIS. It appears to be an on-lead area.
Thanks, Mr Johnson. Councillor Bain?
Considering that the rehabilitation works that the city has done on the point, does it not consider an area of high value as far as the environment is concerned?
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I think the answer is yes. We do consider it an area of high environmental value, Councillor Bain. That may align to the on-lead designation of that area to ensure that dogs are kept on the leash whilst in that area.
Yeah, I think, no, I thought it might be a prohibited area, given that all the birds that rest there in the afternoons and at night, etc. It's a roosting area. But okay, we can talk about that offline.
Sorry, is that the area that's been fenced off now?
Yes, yep, and formerly Mum's Point. It's a restoration area and a refuge for birds, but we can talk about that offline. Just with the ideas and requests that were put forward by residents and users of the Wilson Park Dog Park, is the city able to accommodate their requests as minor works through the budget process, or is an attachment or an amendment to the current report required?
Director Bowe?
I think we'll be able to accommodate them as minor works for the future budgets, Councillor Bain.
Thanks. I've just got a couple of questions. With respect to the nominated figure, 180,000 for the proposed dog park in Shelley at Park Beach Close, is that proposing to invest in everything from Table 12, page 35 of the dog spaces strategy? Is that basically what we're looking to invest into a proposed dog park there? Director Bowe? Mr. Johnson?
If you just bear with me for a minute, Mr. Mayor, I'll just grab the strategy or get to the relevant area, or Mr. Johnson will come in and answer that question for you.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes, I confirm that is the full scope of the works.
And the costs are still pretty similar?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, we hope so.
Thank you. With the investigation into Creekview Park, I've never seen anyone actually use that park, so I was interested in the view of clashes between people with dogs and a dog park and people using the park. But I was just wondering if the city might actually look at just putting a dividing fence to separate the road to the park. That would enable people to utilise that park and throw the ball with dogs and provide a space and not actually enclose the whole park as a formal dog park, because it's a hill that takes everyone to the road to Riverton Drive, so Bull Creek Drive, sorry. So I just wondered if whether a fence along the road would actually provide that segregation to help people walk the dogs and people to play if they do that.
I'm happy to take that question on notice, Deputy Mayor, and provide you with some cost estimates of doing that, and also run that through the staff in relation to the objectives of the strategy.
Thank you. And while we're on Creekview Park, it's only occurred to me recently that the park's full of I'm going to get this wrong, Washingtonia filifera, which my understanding is that they're a pest and we don't plant them and no one plants them given they're highly adaptable and easily spread pest. And they're in close proximity to Yagan wetlands. So I'm just wondering why they're there and why they're not removed. Director Bowe, Mr. Johnson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, they simply just haven't been a priority for us with all the other works that are required in and around the area and other conservation area across the city.
Thank you. That's the last time I'll attempt a scientific name. And just lastly, page 86, paragraph 86 in the community consultation. Sorry, I'll just bring it up. A person spoke about options for cats on leash, and the response was that responsible cat ownership is fully supported by the city. The city has 147 parks where dogs are required to be on leash, and they provide an opportunity for cats to walk on leash where dogs must also be on leash. My understanding going through the local laws is that that's not permissible, that there's no capacity for cats to be regulated on leash under the Act, and that most of our parks are now prohibited spaces for cats. So I'm just wondering, with respect to that advice provided to that person, in terms of people exercising cats, this is an issue I have, and why I'm surprised or disappointed that they're not reviewing the Cat Act. Is that correct advice?
I'm happy to review that, Deputy Mayor, and provide some clarity, including back to the resident who provided that question.
Thank you, Director Bowe. Any further questions, Councillor Sweeney?
Yeah, just to get some further clarity, the $180,000 that we're spending on this dog park, is that consistent and compatible with the investment that we've previously spent on dog parks in the City of Canning.
Director Bowe?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's compatible with the recommendation of the dog spaces strategy and the endorsement that was made by council when the strategy was endorsed for $360,000 to be allocated into identified in the long-term financial plan. So this is our first foray in purpose-built dog parks, Councillor Sweeney. So it is consistent.
Oh, our current dog parks are ad hoc ones. We haven't actually built a proper one yet. Anything further, Councillor Sweeney?
No, thank you.
No worries. Any further questions, councillors? All right, moving on. Thank you, Director Bowe. Moving on to Director Sarah McQuaid, Director Customer and Community. No reports from you. Notice of motions, item 8, for consideration at the next Ordinary Council meeting, there are none. Urgent business, there is none. Item 10, confidential matters. Council now consider a confidential matter. I thank Sian and other members of the public for attending this evening and ask that you leave the chambers in order for Council to consider the item. Governance, can you please confirm when the live streaming has been stopped? Thank you.